Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for January 30th. January 30th is the 30th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 335 days remaining until the end of the year, except in leap years when there's 336 days to the end of the year. Today's word is adamantine or adamantine. It's an adjective, and it means unyielding or firm, like a diamond in hardness or luster, unable to be broken, as in adamantine chains. Impervious to persuasion, requests, or reason. Something adamantine is unbreakable. Adamantine is often used in a figurative way. If you're bound by adamantine chains, get comfy because you're not breaking free. This comes to us from Middle English, and before that from Old French, and before that from Latin, and before that from Greek. Adamant, with the A being the prefix that means not, and daman, which means to conquer. I want to take a moment to mention that links to my research are included in the show notes and ask you to go ahead and click that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section and share this video with others. You can do that either with email, social media, text message. And with that, we're going to start with the year 1649. And King Charles I was beheaded for treason in London on January 30th, 1649. There was quite a bit that led up to this, including a kangaroo court, wherein Charles was forced to appear before a high court controlled by his enemies. He was convicted of treason and sentenced to death. Now, once Charles was executed, the main guy in charge of that whole circus, Oliver Cromwell, managed to abolish the monarchy and conveniently placed himself in charge of the country. This would be England we're talking about. 10 years later, Oliver Cromwell died, and after a little bit more shenanigans, the monarchy was restored. Oliver Cromwell was posthumously convicted of treason and his body disinterred from its honored burial at the Westminster Abbey and ritually executed more than 2 years after his death. Interestingly, on the 12th anniversary of the execution of the monarch, he himself deposed. Maryland was the 13th and final state to ratify the Articles of Confederation on January 30th, 1781. On January 30th, 1835, Andrew Jackson became the first American president to experience an assassination attempt. This was way before the days of anything like Secret Service. A fellow named Richard Lawrence, unemployed, possibly with mental health issues, walked right up to Jackson and shot at him. But fortunately, his pistol misfired. Well, of course, this shocked and frightened Jackson and made him really mad. He was furious, and he proceeded to beat the would-be assassin with his walking stick. Which sounds like something I might do. In the fracas, Lawrence pulled out another loaded pistol and tried again, and that gun misfired. Finally, Jackson's aides wrestled Lawrence to the ground. Jackson was physically uninjured, but certainly traumatized by this sequence of events. The United States' 32nd President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was born on January 30th, 1882. On January 30th, 1920, the Mazda car company was founded. Well, it started out as something else with a different name and a different product. But once the company was established, it eventually did make motorized vehicles. They started making little trucks in 1950 and cars in 1960. And have evolved into the Mazda car company with which you are familiar today. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was named Chancellor of Germany. And the guy that did that actually did it because he was a little bit afraid of Hitler. He was afraid of what he might do if he had been denied again, because he'd been passed over for this position before. History tells the story, doesn't it? On January 30th, 1933, the Lone Ranger debuted on Detroit's WXYZ radio station. Now there's a radio station handle for you. It was an instant hit and has enjoyed great popularity for decades. On January 30th, 1948, Mohandas Gandhi was assassinated, also known as Mahatma, which is actually more of a title of honor. It means the great soul. So referring to him as Mahatma Gandhi, it'd be like calling him the great soul Gandhi. He encouraged peaceful civil disobedience to make changes and was actually pretty good at that. I mean, who wants to go along with someone who's loud, hateful, rude, and violent? So he took the peaceful civil disobedience route, and it took a while, sure, but he actually did effect some change. And he was a huge influence on some leaders of civil rights movements around the world, especially Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States. This is the birthday of English drummer, singer, songwriter, producer, and actor Phil Collins. Born on January 30th, 1951, he turned 69 as I read this in 2020. On January 30th, 1956, the home of Martin Luther King Jr. was bombed. An unidentified white supremacist terrorist bombed the Montgomery home of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. No one was harmed, but the explosion outraged the community and was a major test of King's steadfast commitment to nonviolence. On January 30th, 1959, the MS Hans Hedtoft, said to be the safest ship afloat and unsinkable like the RMS Titanic, struck an iceberg on her maiden voyage and sunk, killing all 95 aboard. The Beatles' last public performance on the roof of Apple Records in London took place on January 30th, 1969. The impromptu concert was broken up by the police. And I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And feel free to share. While you're here, check out my other channel, 8 Susquehanna. There's a link in the show notes to that as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Test, 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 test. So many mistakes. Where were we? Let's try something different here. All right, do that again. There's a good girl. Good girl. I don't know how all that's going to go together, or if it's even going to make it to the video. We'll just see. Probably cut all that out. That'll all be laying on the cutting room floor. So I'll just do that whole thing over. That might not make it into the video. We'll see. Changing it up.